Yo, Live All Good podcast listeners. Hope everybody's doing well out there. For this month's Move the Needle episode, we discuss two very important terms. One is equality, the other is equity. Coming up next is a roundtable discussion figuring out how those are different. Stay tuned. Welcome back from that short break, everybody. As you heard in the intro, today's topic it's fairly important, and I'm just going to say it. We are talking about equality versus equity. I'm here with fellow coach Adam Atkins. How you doing, my brother?
I'm great, man. Appreciate you having me on, Lee. Thank you.
Oh man, I'm glad you're with us today. I'm glad you're with us. So, I think what's important for our listeners to hear is the equality versus equity, mm-hmm. right? Everybody uses these terms interchangeably, and it's much like it's obvious when you see something that is just simply not right, right? Mm-hmm. The overt things are easy to pinpoint. What I have a few examples, and I'd want to ask you, your experiences and some examples you might be able to think of. But it's important to know and recognize the less obvious things about equality and equity and why they're different. Mm-hmm. So let's jump into that. When you hear the terms equality and equity, what comes up for you?
Yeah, well, first starting with equality, and I want to begin there from my perspective, just because that's probably what I've heard most in my life, right? I mean, going back to equal opportunity. And so, when I hear equality, I just think about, just that. I think about really the front end of a process, right? Just to use a generic example. And so, for a particular group of individuals, that they're given access to the same opportunities, to the same resources, whatever it may be. Now, when
you agreed, and you're right. I think that's dead on. Equality is that, right? Everybody having the same access to whatever it is.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Now equity, and this is, candidly something I'm still sorting through a bit. But how I've interpreted this, Lee, is that equality is really on the other end of the process, right? It's not necessarily at the entry point. It's more in regards to ensuring within the scheme of call it a system or a process that a group of people are afforded, access to, again, the same resources and opportunities, but with the intention of providing them with an equitable outcome, a similar outcome that other individuals and groups are afforded and have received and have been a part of. But again, that's how I've interpreted it. That's how I'm understanding it. A long way to go for me, candidly. But that's where I'm at with it right now.
Okay. Well, I'd like to propose this example, because I think so. When we're talking about equality and equity, right? If you're talking about society, you're talking about a system that was designed to hold a certain set of people in power, if you will. But I'd like to propose this, and you being a parent, I think this will even help clarify it, right? So as parent now, even though I have one kid and you have more than one, and I think, but I can think about this like growing up, right? I was not an only child, so think about how you parent, right? Equality and equity shows up in every aspect of parenting. Now, while you provide your kids with equal access to being clothed, being housed, being fed, right? Like those are the basics. Your kids get all of that. But if I'm wrong, don't you treat your kids differently because each one of them has different personalities and different needs? Therefore, the way that you might treat one of
Mm.
them not be the same as you will treat one of the others. Like
Yeah.
I know you haven't, so you will not treat your
Yeah.
oldest the way you treat your youngest,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
That is what equity is.
Mm.
So we're introduced to what equality and equity is early
Mhm.
on. But because we're, and I don't want to say trained, but we're kind of taught to think that they're synonymous. We think it's the same thing as we grow up.
Mm.
But if anyone has been, like, again, if you're in a family with more than one
Mhm.
kid, you definitely know what equal is. And you know what equal is
Yeah.
not. So, your kid may say, well, that's not fair. Very true.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Equality is not necessarily fair. Well, equality is fair. Equity may not feel
Mm.
fair, but equity has to happen for equality to happen.
Mm. That is a great example.
Yeah. Well, and that's so. I'll give a personal example of it. I was talking to my niece the other day, and she's got two kids, and they were about two years apart, I think. And so the older son was with her, and they come home from school late and had to do some other stuff, so they stopped by Chick-fil-A,
Mm-hmm.
right? That was like that's their thing. And so the younger son was with the dad, and because he was home with the dad, they ended up going to I don't got a slushie or some ice
Uh-huh.
cream or something,
Uh-huh.
right? So long story short, when the older son and my niece came home, the older son was telling the dad, "Well, that's not fair. I wanted the slushie too." And he's like, "Well, you got
Uh-huh.
something else. You got Chick-fil-A, and that's what you did. But he was here with me, so we went out and this is what he got." So while it's equal that they both got a treat, they both got something
Yeah.
special. The equity is that the slushie was for the younger one, or again, I think it was ice cream. I don't know,
Mm.
not the point of what it is, but that's what's equitable,
Yeah.
right? And because it was done equitably, it was also equal because they both got a treat.
Mm.
But was it the same? No, it was not the same.
Mm.
So now that I bring up that example, what is your picture look like now for equality versus equity?
Well, I can just say, first off, that's really opening my mind. I mean, that was
Okay.
just a tremendously impactful and relatable example that I'm very grateful to have just experienced with you. So I appreciate you sharing that. And if there's anyone who understands kids and
Sure.
lots of them, it's me. And so thank you, brother, for that. Um, you know, but let me say this with respect to equity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense to me, given your
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
examples. I would say that this is absolutely a conversation that needs to not just happen, but it's a conversation that we each need to be intentional about, because I can tell you, if children have a difficult time understanding and accepting equity, how much more of a
Yes.
difficult
Yes.
time are adults going to have comprehending, accepting, receiving equity?
Mm.
Uh, oh,
Especially with all the layers that we've already
yeah.
piled on in our
Yeah. I
life.
mean,
Absolutely.
I'm just even thinking, me,
Absolutely.
like, I'm a very open individual. I should say I have become an open
Mm-hmm.
individual. And I'm blessed to have had that opportunity to open up, in my
Yeah.
adult life.
Yeah.
But my goodness, this is certainly going to be a challenge for a number of people. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care what color your skin is. It doesn't matter. This is a tough one, man.
And you nailed it. It is definitely a challenge. So it's easy, right? It's easy to say, okay, yeah, here you go. You have access to this. You have access to that. Yeah, that's the easy part. The hard part is equity. It's how far do you have to reach? How big is the bridge that you have to build so that whoever is missing out on the equal access can actually get to that access? Man, you're so right. Hey, real quick, man, let's take a quick break, and then let's come back, and we got some more examples that we want to share with our listeners.
I love it.
How you feel about that? All right. Hey, everybody, we'll be right back here with Adam Atkins, fellow coach, brother from another mother. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back. We had a short break there. We are also joined on this month's Move the Needle while we're talking about equality versus equity. We are now joined by Bill Schultes. Bill, how's it going, man?
Hey, Lee, man. Thanks so much for having me on. It's awesome.
No, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. This is an important conversation, and Adam is still here as well. So just want to recap for the listeners real quick. Before the break, we were talking, we kind of introduced the difference between equality versus equity. And I think so often these terms are used interchangeably, like they're synonymous. And we pointed out the difference that they're not. We pointed out, Adam greatly pointed out how equality is kind of at the end of the process, right? But how do we get there? How do we get to equality? And I kind of mentioned what the differences are between equity and equality. And we talked about we're introduced to it, even though we're in this system that was designed to hold a certain set of people in power. We are definitely introduced to equality and equity as we're growing up. If you've been in a family of more than one child, so if you're not an only child, or if you have more than one, you know what equality and equity is all about. Because we also talk about the overt things, right? Like, with what's going on in our country, it's clear to most of us what is equal and then what is also equitable, right? That's clear. But it's the things that are less clear that we need to really point out to nail this home. So, Bill, what would be your take on what equality versus equity is?
I mean, it's such an important discussion because I think in this country we hide. We hide with these words. We like confusing them because then it allows us to avoid addressing the real issue of addressing these historical wrongs because we're afraid we're going to lose power as white people. And it's frustrating, and then it allows people to claim victimhood if you're not talking about equality, that equity is somehow bizarrely racist.
Right.
And it just sort of, it frustrates because it's all designed to just stop change.
Yeah. While you were talking about that, something hit me about equality. I read, there was I don't even remember what article I read, but it said that equality doesn't really call for accountability, right? You can sit there and say, here again, we were talking about access to X, right? So equality is here. You both have access to X, right? That requires no accountability. Equity actually requires thought, effort, and accountability to get to the equality.
And action.
And action. Yes.
Yeah.
And action. Yes.
Well, and you got to like put aside fear and like, I mean, fear's behind so much of this of losing something, as if creating a society through equity that gets us to equality, you're going to lose. I'm like, how? That's crazy. We're all going to win, you know? Like,
right. You know what, Bill? I'll tell you this, something that Adam's a fellow coach also, and something that we learned early on in coaching training is that how to help people get through like change is hard, right? And it can be difficult. But if you present change in a way that allows someone to understand they're not going to be losing out, they're actually going to be gaining from change. That's what the mindset shift is all about. So, Bill, you nailed it, right? And Adam being in action, that's everything.
Yeah. What
equality versus equity is about. I want to drop another example for you guys, something that I read, and this was on good old social media, right? I was looking at Instagram of one of many times, and a white lady from Kentucky posted this about, I think where was she in Target, right? And she noticed she was in the makeup section. And this was foundation, I think it was some kind of foundation. And obviously, so in terms of equality, there were all the shades of Now, of course, I don't think any of us use foundation, but there were all these shades of foundation, right? From the light shades for, lighter people, and not just black people, but, white women, all that, right? Lighter shades all the way to the darker shades. So that's equal. That's equality, right? Here's where the inequity lies. So this lady continues to post, and she shows, takes a video of it. And as literally halfway through this display, as you start to get to the darker shades of the foundation, all of the darker shades have security tags.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm going to just let that sink in for a minute.
Man.
All of the darker shades had security tags. And she noticed that. She was like, so wait a minute. How is that? And so again, it may not have been Target, maybe Walmart. I don't know. But she was like, okay, we now know, how racist you are. So that's what this is so deeply ingrained in the fabric of our society, right? They think they're doing something good by providing equal amounts of this makeup for all women, right? Okay, cool. Thank you. We appreciate that. Oh, wait, there's only half of them, and the darker half have security tags.
So nuts.
And then how does that work? That's, I mean, she made it very clear, right? She made it very clear. That one struck me pretty good, because if a white lady in Kentucky can pick that out, and I am not by any stretch calling white people in Kentucky racist. That is not my point. So I am not trying to offend anyone. But if she can see the nuance behind, I'm not even going to call that racism, but that is a systemic inequity that is driven by what we think, this is more likely to happen. So how that is inequitable. man, that yeah, right.
It's tough.
It's yeah.
Well, you wonder how much of it is that people just are living
Right,
and they're
right.
not even thinking. It's so normalized.
If you don't use your brain to decipher all these coded messages, you know. As a matter of fact, Bill, do you you want to mention the picture that you posted about the model train? I literally just thought about that.
Yes, I kind of, and I funny, I laughed because I knew you were going there. Like Lee knows I'm in the like model trains, and I'm fascinated by the talent. Like, so I'm lurking around Instagram too, and I see this amazing model, a lot of talent, a lot of work went into this model, and these people are quite proud of it. But in the model train business, in the adult world, adults like to have little silly jokes, so they make a little scene, and if you really pay attention to the details, to try to get a laugh. And so I was looking at this video. It was actually a video. I was watching it, and then I started looking at the scene, and then I saw what was the joke of the scene, and it made me really angry because I started to realize there's two police cars pulled up at the curb in front of the liquor store. There's a lot of people around. There's these white people on the roof of the building and white people on the corner looking across, white people down the street looking back. And then I zeroed in on the police officer and the person who was under arrest, and it was a black man.
Yep.
Only black person in this whole scene, with at least 30 or 40 figures that people had to purchase. There's a lot of thinking going on here to create this scene, and there's only one black person in the scene, and he's being arrested.
Right.
And it's like, and I'm like, this is comedy. And I'm like, this is sickening. I mean, it's so, I'm like, so how do you get there? Is this guy some overt Klan member? Probably not.
Exactly.
Whatever environment he's living in, this is so normalized. And clearly he has no black friends. Because when he brings all his white buddies over, he's going to point that out and ha ha ha, isn't that funny? And I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
Or here's the other bad part about that, right? I'm going to take that one step further. I'd be willing to say he has a black friend, and that black friend probably has to be subjected to having to laugh at the same joke because we also feel pressure to fit in, right?
Right.
So because there you go.
Brutal, right?
Exactly.
Instead of this guy doing his history lessons and really thinking about it. It's crazy.
Right. You don't want to be the one on the outside, so you're going to laugh at the same joke. Like, oh, yeah, man, that's fucked up. Look, who got arrested? Me. Ha ha. Oh, wait a minute. What? Yeah. Exactly. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Hey, guys, I want to drop another example since we have talked about a couple negative examples, right? Let me drop this. I want to give you a positive example. And again, scrolling through, this wasn't social media, but it was an article about a principal, and this was in Kansas City, right? So again, and I'm paraphrasing tremendously here, but there was a sixth grade black kid, right? In sixth grade, was wearing his hat inside the classroom, right? And I think the teacher tried to say, hey, take the hat off. And the kid was like resisting, like, no, I'm not taking the hat off, not taking the hat off. So of course, kid gets sent. The assistant principal is trying to get him to take the hat off, not taking it off, not taking it off. So, and again, sixth grade is what, 12, 13-ish. So we're talking pre-teens, right? So it goes on, gets to the principal. The principal is talking to the kid, and the kid is dead set on wearing the hat because he's not happy with his haircut. Okay? So bookmark that. Not happy with the haircut. So the principal, instead of, because typically if they, in this school, from what the article said, this is an offense that requires like suspension, right? Whether it's in school, out of school, they didn't say. But if the kid got suspended, then misses class, misses out on education.
Yep.
Right? What the principal did, drove home, which is about 30 minutes, they say, from the school. I'm sorry. He first brought this up to the kid. He was like, look, if I fix this, will you take the hat off? And the kid's like, yeah. So the principal drove home, again, about 30 minutes away, so an hour drive, got his own clippers, came back to school, fixed the kid's lineup, and the kid took the hat off and was able to go back to class.
Well done.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, right. Now, I purposely did not say anything about the principal, but the principal was a black man. Okay. That is the perfect example of equality versus equity, right? The equal thing to do is, hey, the rules are you don't wear the hat in class, right? That's the rule. So, of course, equality calls for, well, you broke the rule. I need to punish you.
Yep.
Right? That bridge of equity to get to the equality for the education purpose. That bridge was the principal taking the time to find out what was wrong and why, because this kid apparently was not a problem kid, wasn't in trouble, but there's a reason why this kid was wearing the hat. And if you know anything about preteens, everything is a crisis.
Everything.
So everything is a crisis. And I think we all know that very well. So kudos to that principal, man, because that was equity, was meeting that kid where he needed the help and providing the whatever was needed, so the kid didn't have to miss out on something, And there's
right, like his like 90 minutes of effort or 2 hours, like got that kid 2 days worth of school
time. And the bigger part of this too, that I want to mention about equity is, I think what people miss, equity has a lot to do with a cultural background. And I'm not just speaking of, Black culture, any culture, right? It has a cultural component to it. If you have someone, let's call it someone who is not a native English speaker, but they come to this country and they're trying to make a better life for themselves and their family. Well, if they're having trouble with the English language, which is understandable to the 10th degree, right? What's equitable for them? Let's try to figure out how to meet them, to communicate with them that's comfortable, so that they can then do what they need to do. That makes sense.
Makes total sense. And Lee, I can't help but point out, because this is helpful for me. I can't imagine how helpful it would be for so many others. But, you've used the phrase bridge a few times already in this conversation in regards to equity. And I think that's almost like a hack, man. That's like a ninja trick. Like, you want to understand equity? Think of a bridge, right? Man, that is easy to understand, right? So if we want to get this dialogue going, I think that's a great starting point for so many people, because who hasn't been helped out in their life, in some way, shape, or form?
And that's what we talk about, right? The equity is, I mean, I hate to say it again because you just pointed it out, but bridging the gap. and it's not about who has been privileged from the current system. I'm not singling anyone out from that. The the singling out now is, okay, we are aware of the system that was created. So how do we Do we make it more fair? How do we get to those underserved people? Because it's not just Black people, it's a socioeconomic thing as well. Right? How do we get to those people so that it becomes a level playing field? Yeah. So I'll take
funny,
that. Oh, sorry, Bill. Did I cut you off? I didn't mean to.
No, yeah, no, run with that hat.
Oh man,
I'd run with it.
You guys, I do have another example, and this one, this one really hit home for me, and because you guys know all of, if you haven't, you've heard about all the DEI stuff, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple pictures that I came across actually when I was actually doing a little bit of research for this particular topic. And there's a couple pictures that came across that I found. And the one that hits home the most, it's very simple. But then when you dive into the picture a little bit, it makes you think, wait a minute. It's still about trying to fix a system that's already doing what it's supposed to do. So I'll do my best to describe the pictures. And for our listeners, I will probably make a blog post and social media post with these pictures as well about equality versus equity, because I think this is well worth the conversation. So the picture, and you guys may know of this picture or have seen it. There's a picture of an apple tree, right? And there's two people on either side of the apple tree, and they're colorless, which, first of all, I think already starts off wrong, because you're not looking at diversity or equity or inclusion if everybody's the same.
Come on, man. We're colorblind society. I don't see color.
That's right. My bad. I forgot. We're all the same. I forgot.
We're all the same. Yeah, exactly.
You gotta peel back the layers, though. So then there's this apple tree, and it's got both people on each side, and the tree is leaning severely to the left. So the person on the left has the easy picking of the apples, and the other person on the right can't reach the tree. So the next picture, they show equality as both people have been given a ladder, right? So it's a ladder of equal length. So now the person on the left is picking more apples. The tree is still leaning to the left. So they're getting all the good apples, while the person on the right is able to reach like one, maybe two apples. Okay, but that's equality because they both have a ladder. So then the third picture, it shows that this the now ladder for the person on the right is taller. So now the person on the right is able to get almost as many apples as the person on the left because they have a taller ladder. That has been the accepted display, right? Accepted pictures of equity, and I was willing to go along with that, right? So this article I was reading, the author actually posed these questions. So because then said, let's take this a step further, right? That's not necessarily a true representation of equity, because let's think about this. Typically, the way that the tree is shown leaning, trees don't grow that way on their own, right? So maybe generationally, because it takes trees forever to grow to fruition. Maybe it was planted and grown that way. It was grown purposely to bend to the left. That's the system, right? So it also shows another picture where it has braces and it has ropes and stuff that straightens the tree. And that is also supposed to display equity, right? Because now both sides have equal access to the exact same apples, and the tree is standing up straight with the braces and the ropes. And I'm like, okay, I can buy that. But the author takes it one step further. And this is where I think this is what this conversation is about. The putting the braces and the ropes on the tree in order to straighten the tree would indicate that the system is actually not broken, and that we can actually take little steps here and there to patch the system. And that, I think, is the problem. We're trying to patch a system that actually is designed to do what it's been doing. And I think that's not necessarily the way to go. In my version, I would include, and this is probably extreme, but I would say cut the tree down. You cut the tree down. You distribute the apples equitably, equally, and you plant more trees in the same spot.
Yeah.
That's actually equitable. You know, plant 4 or 5 trees in that same spot. You tend to them, you grow them. But I think the tree that was manipulated from the beginning, you have to find a way to, and maybe you don't cut it all the way down, right? But you have to cut it so far back that you might as well cut it down.
Yeah. Well, I can see why when talk of reparations come up, people freak out because the reality is like there's so much to be done to make up for hundreds of years of abuse, and like they'd rather focus on a Band-Aid.
Right.
Look over here. Look what I did for you, man. I gave you a step ladder. Why aren't you all better now?
Exactly. Well, I'm going to tell you, this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion that I'm about to say, but I think one of the worst Band-Aids for trying to create equity or equality was affirmative action. Because what affirmative action, like, yes, it helped equality because it made you look at candidates of color, right? But it went backwards because those who were then using affirmative action to either fill a quota or look at unqualified candidates did everybody else a disservice. So affirmative action would be those ropes and braces around the tree.
I can see that, Lee. The intention was good, at least to bring about awareness. But yeah, I can see your point there.
Yeah.
Well, and you're just impacting fewer people.
Exactly.
There's so much damage, so many people left behind. But it's like,
and I think.
But what about an end? Do both, though. I mean, I think that's probably more a reality of this society is like double down on that stuff and help who you can, but really dig deep and start to fix some of this stuff. I mean, I think I've seen a couple interesting things lately. One, there was a experiment out in California of giving people income, like $600 a month, and it's having a huge impact on lifting some people out of poverty. And they're like, no strings attached. Do what you want.
Oh wow!
You want to go buy a case of beer? Go ahead.
Right.
You want to go to community college? Go. Whatever. Pay your rent. Pay your bills. And the vast majority of people are making responsible decisions.
That is equity.
And that's like, you trust them. And like our whole system here is fear, right? I don't trust welfare.
Yeah.
They're going to be welfare queens and they're going to waste the money and they're wasting my money, my white man's money. And I worked hard.
You're so right.
And it's like,
you're so right.
Crazy.
Yeah. And that's why, and Bill, to your point that you made earlier, that's why things aren't being addressed is because of this fear, right? It's so difficult for so many to look truth in the eye, and the easier choice right now is to just provide a Band-Aid, right? If nothing else, for the optics of, hey, look what we're trying to do over here. We're trying to help. We're yeah.
Bingo. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does it look like, as opposed to rolling
and
up
what's
sleeves
really
and getting your hands dirty? Yeah. Yeah. No, man. You guys have really hit some key points as well. So before we wrap it up, do you guys have any thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with equality versus equity?
I mean, if I had anything, Bill, sorry if I interrupted you there. If I had anything to add, Lee, and I appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to be on and to comment here at the close, is, man, sure. It's really, what can we do to give people a hand? What can we do to build a bridge? How can we help people, rise up from the ashes and experience the life that they're created to have?
Yes. Love that. Yes.
That's beautiful.
That is meeting people where they are and helping them live their truth.
Yeah.
Helping them find it. Absolutely. Yeah. Bill, is there any final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
This is an eternal struggle for me, because I work with this in my work. I see it in change, right? The fear and change or paralyze human behavior. You get tribal, different groups, different interests want to protect themselves. So breaking through that requires real connection.
Yes.
This urban versus rural, it's crazy to me, poor versus rich, black, white. There's so many bridges that have to be built. It's so much work.
Wow.
With that, all of us have a role, in our own way, to get there. But I think the work you're doing is powerful, and it's a million conversations with people who know each other. And I think, white people got to speak up. We're the problem here.
Yeah.
We gotta kind of dig in here and help make those bridges.
Yeah. And Bill, I love what you said about connection. And I just want to highlight that word for me. I'm just feeling compelled to highlight that word connection. And I believe ultimately, Bill, it begins with individuals like me and you, white men, who first need to connect with ourselves and connect to this issue. And then once we've done that, then we can help others connect to it as well. So let's be a part of the solution. I love what you're saying there, man.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, I changed through my relationship with Lee and other black friends, and it comes from living in D.C. I grew up in Vermont with only white people around me for 20 years, and internalized a lot of racist craziness that I wasn't even aware was getting cooked into me. And then you come down and live in a diverse community, and you develop real relations with people, and you're like, wow, you can change, but you got to do some work. And I've had to do some work to learn. And, but man, I got to tell you, it's a struggle, like trying to connect back home with some folks back there where the dilemma is they're not exposed to different people. Their environment has to change.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to connect with them and relate, but they have a gap because they have no real lived experience with it.
And that's that bridge so I'll leave you guys with this too, right? There was true intention behind having you guys talk about this too, right? There was true intention because you all are the bridge to the connection of the people we're trying to have a mindset shift with. That's the key, And again, and let me not leave, there are other mindset shifts of other groups that need to be had as well. But I think this is the biggest domino that needs to fall first.
Yeah.
And once we get the blueprint on knocking this domino down, the rest of them start falling, and we the train gets rolling down the track.
Yeah, so, one thing I've wondered is I'm always trying to make lemonade out of lemons. So coronavirus, man, it's been rough. I wish you and I got more time together this year. We've been very, very responsible.
We're going to make up for it, man. Trust me.
We're close. We're knocking on that door. But for the more of the work from home types, it'll be fascinating to me that some of these bridges can be repaired. Like as some of these people that came and lived in these diverse cities, more urban areas, if they have the opportunity now to do their jobs remote and go back to these places that need.
And I think you're right. Yeah. That's going to be key. We're going to look down the road 5-10 years from now. And I think this has been a monumental shifting point.
I hope so.
I cannot thank you enough for joining me on Move the Needle this month. The Move the Needle podcast is a monthly podcast. It's part of the Live All Good family of podcasts. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google, several other platforms as well. Bill, Adam, truly thank you guys. And this is not the last that we will do an episode.
Fantastic, man. Let's do it again, baby.